Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Shireen here with another tutorial, Adobe tutorial. This one is going to look at brushes, and it's also going to do a little crossover with Adobe for Fashion because it's going to kind of lead us into thinking about brushes to add garment details to our technical drawings, to our flats. So this is going to be a two-parter. I'm going to just do an introduction to brushes, just as they pertain to getting sort of an idea of the concept of what they are and how to get started making them. And then I'm going to move over and do another video. Up here you see I'm looking at symbols, which are another one of our tools in our toolbox for creating details. And then I'll do another sort of continuing looking at brushes and how to edit them and how to take them to the next level. But let's just get started with the basic concept of what brushes are. So first of all, we know that when we create any basic shape, if we come up here and we fill a color, we can make a different color for a stroke, and we basically have a fill and a stroke. And we look at that stroke, it's just a basic stroke that's literally following along the path. But in the end, actually, when we look at it as view outline, there's nothing really there. So in the end, that stroke is a visual effect. And so brushes, we go back to preview, brushes are another way that we can add a visual effect to our stroke. So let's get started. My recommendation when you're first starting out is creating a very simple brush. Any motif can be used. I'll create a little simple dot. You can make a heart, you can make a star, whatever shape you want to make. You can draw a little bird, whatever you would like. But I always recommend start off with black, and there's a reason for that. When we look in the more advanced video, we'll look at how we edit the colors of the brush and how we get it to function on that end. But I will just start right now with just a simple little dot. It's always like the very basic place that I start. So here's a little simple circle, black fill, no stroke. My brushes palette is here, my panel is here. So all I need to do is, here's my very basic motif. We're going to focus today on pattern brushes only. So let's go ahead in this video and create a pattern brush. And why are we creating a pattern brush? Because we're going to ask this motif to repeat out like a pattern. So pattern brush. And you get already in the brush options, you get this really nice preview already. So I'm just going to call this one dot one, first dot ever. And really, for a lot of these other considerations, you really want to think about the relationship of the specific artwork, of the motif, of the brush to that specific path. Does it have a lot of anchor points? Does it have a lot of curves, joins? So this I would leave for later. But for right now, we want to start looking at the scale. Well, yeah, I want it to be the same fixed scale right across the board in this instance. But for the spacing, I could do 100% spacing, and I get a preview of what that looks like. Or I could get 50%, and I think I kind of like that ratio better. And then the last thing that you might want to consider, Illustrator does a really nice job of guessing how you want the brushes to act when they're on an anchor point on a corner, because sometimes they sort of act a little funny when we get to the corners. So here on the outer corner, it still should look like a dot. On the path, it should look like a dot. You might want to check this one, the inner corner, make sure it still looks like. Let me see what the options are. Yep, something like that. So even inside this little preview, it'll show you what it's going to look like on the outer and inner corner, how it'll look on the end. That looks great. Colorization, fit, and flip. I'm going to edit those when I work on specific brushes and paths. So for right now, if this is my motif, it's saved as a brush. This is going to help me to have a pattern brush, repeat the motif along a path. So now all I need is a path. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and create. I always kind of create like a big sort of curvy, nice little path. And along that path, I'm going to add my pattern brush. Ta-da! So it's basically that same motif, and we're just having it repeating along in a pattern on a stroke. Remember, there's no fill here. So this is when we're talking about brushes, we're talking about strokes. When we're talking about swatches, we're talking about fills, what's happening on the inside. But brushes is what we do when we're looking at strokes. So how could this, I mentioned earlier, this could help us with our garment details. So let's make another shape, and I'll invite you to consider a little small rectangle. I'll make it black, like I said earlier, black with no fill. And, you know, I can make it zoom in, I can make it a little bit longer, whatever, skinny, long, whatever. It's a little rectangle, black, no stroke, drag and drop, pattern brush. Again, this looks a little bit funny, but if I do space 100, that's starting to look like something. Maybe even I'll even increase the space. And then maybe at the corner, yeah, it doesn't have a lot of options, so maybe I can either just choose none for the corner, or I could try Yeah, not a lot of options of how it's going to meet with the corner. So we'll talk about that in the more advanced section. For right now, I'm just going to choose none. And again, all these other choices I'll leave. So spacing is really the main work. And then, if applicable, the corners. And then you're done. Let's go ahead and zoom out. Oh, I got rid of my path. No problem. Let me create another path. Okay, and I'll go ahead and flip this to bring the path to have no fill and to have a stroke. And lo and behold, there you go. If we zoom in, what does that look like? That could kind of start to look like a rib. So it's a simple rectangle, but having it repeat out like that along an edge, you could understand how that could start to look like a rib for the edge of sleeves, for wherever it happens to fall on the garment. But before we finish this video, one last trick, talking about, again, Adobe for Fashion. What's kind of nice is, what if I kind of create something a little bit smaller, and about halfway up, I'm using Option to make that duplicate. So Option and drag creates that duplicate. That duplicate, I'm actually just going to make it sort of a gray color so that there's some variation between the black and the gray. And again, we'll talk about coloring these up later, but so they have no stroke. And I got this one to be about halfway. I chose to line it up to the marker, the center marker. If I drag and drop, again, our only focus for these kind of details is pattern. There you go. It's starting to look like something familiar. Let's call it zip and see if we can get something to look a little like this. Now, what do you think? That could also look like a really rudimentary basic zipper. So in the place of where a zipper is, you could communicate that with a simple brush. So I'm going to end here. This was your introduction to brushes and the concept of what they are, how to get started making them. Check out the next video for symbols and working with more visual effects in Illustrator, making more garment details, and then we're going to talk about how to start coloring these up and editing them and really working with them. So please make sure to ask questions in the comments below. Please, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And I can't wait to see what you create. All right, see you next time. Thanks.